Cities as Movement, Economies by Bill Hiller of 1996. Now, the physical city and the functional city. Based on this chapter, it says, it is a truism to say that how we design cities depend on how we understand them. Truism in the 20th century is a disquieting force. Cities are recognized as the largest and most complex artifact humankind made. Lessons were learned during intensive interventions and a painful process of trial and error, timescales, or slow efforts. Thus, impossible maintaining a continued experience, hoping that time gives rise to a deeper theoretical understanding of cities. Junctures of functional yet questionable future city settlements should be dense or sparse, uncleared or dispersed, monocentric or polycentric, or a mix of all four types. Raises issues of sustainability. We must base our cities on what we know today. It is clear today that we do not know what we mean by a better understanding. Physically, cities are stock of buildings linked by space and infrastructures or functionally supported economically, socially, culturally, and environmentally through a process and effectively a means-end system, meaning having physical and functional ends. Critically, ignorance in relation to mean ends to physical and functional city, supported by ignorance to critical areas. The presence of compartmentalization in the past quarter century spills analysis and control of social and economic process of dividing planners to those concerned with physical and spatial synthesis in cities from urban designers. There are two consequences in our ability to act on cities. The first is a functional gap. Having the issue of function doesn't relate to design or vice versa. The second is scale gap in relation to functionally city and its dependence barely reaches urban areas we live in. Urban design starts with groups of buildings but fears totality of buildings in reference to fear of previous errors where failure to understand cities as a spatial and functional whole occurred. Disciplinary apartheid failed to what seems to be the first simple component about a city. Factually, it's a large complex physical and spatial object used to record functional process historically created and simultaneously the strongest constraint of future development. High attempts of using virtual modeling to attain better results dealt critical damage at the grossest level distancing at which most interventions are made. Knowing that urban model aims to bring structural dynamic, physical, and spatial interventions brings critical weakness to what's present. Physical cities prove difficult to model effectively due to two constraints. First, physically and spatially, structures in cities create disorderly outcomes producing geometrical, no functional simplicity, but quasi-organic are tractable and evidently were neglected. Second, increments of economic and social process creates physical and spatial patterns that are complex created, amplifies, and interactions between different scales. The change in urban growth exhibits emergence seen in macro changes, produces unforeseen effects in the micro scale. Urban designers design attention in moral earnestness, creating a sense of place rich and complex compared to those found in traditional cities with little analytical endeavor. Practical experience suggests preoccupation with locals to get priorities in the wrong order. This author defines place are not local things, they are moments in large scales things we call cities. Distinctions is vital, and without understanding, places do not make cities. Now, multifunctionality and the part-whole problem. The starting point for query into form and function of cities found hope in theories as a mean-end system. Irritating anomalies are usually pushed on edges to hide these conceptual schemes, but the rule is to have them centered rather than hiding it to edges. Spatial and physical configuration of cities work different in ways such as climate, economic, social, aesthetic, etc. The next problem refers to cities' strong sense of local place. making it clearly morphological in terms of spatial distinctions between places. The two issues are related in a generic functional factor being intelligible and movable. These powerful aspects of function influences urban form relationships between form and function through space. The principal generator of theory has here is discovery, because this is purely a spatial configuration and a powerful single determinant of urban movement, both pedestrian and vehicular. Now, form and function in space are not independent. We must begin making observations about space and its relation to function. Normally, space and function are regarded as independent things. But in relation to how humans behave in a space, natural geometry rises. Relationships at elementary levels suggest that the proper way formulating relations is given to us by diving urban spaces, necessarily continuously among human functions. Consider Figure A. Figure A is the plan of Rome in a customary to black out buildings and white out spaces to give contrast. Considering Figure B has the fewest but longest lines covering open spaces of Rome, forming potential matrix. Consider Figure C. Figure C constrains all convex elements known as public openings together with isovists. It is defined as all lines passing through space related in urban structure as a whole. Knowing this, we immediately see how mistaken we would see Roman squares as local elements. All these ways of looking are layers of spatial structuring, coexisting on its own contribution to intelligence and function. Now, the shape of space in the City of London. The City of London is often criticized as haphazard and organic but never explained why. Considering Figure A. Figure A's black and white out elements convey emphasization that it's the space we look for. Considering Figure B. Figure B is a home in the allegedly labyrinthian back area of the city between Cornhill and Lombard Street, taken from the Roke map of 1746. Despite being a labyrinth, from the ground level, it doesn't seem so. Considering Figure A, we can produce a highly informative map, one in which we can calculate integration only up to 3 integration, in contrast to global or radius n integrations. Considering Figure B integrations value in line map are of great importance in understanding how urban systems function, because it turns out that how much movement passes down each line is very strongly influenced by its integration value calculated in this way. Now, the principle of natural movement. This is the relationship between structures of urban grid and movement densities along lines. Now, multiplier effects and the movement economy. Pursuing this by thinking carefully about what it would take to produce this degree of agreement between grid, structure, movement, land use, and densities, leading us to the general formation of cities. Now, this urbanism. Urban movement economy airing multiplier effects of space depends on certain conditions such as a size, density, distribution of land use, grid maintaining local and global, etc. Considering Figure 28.8. Figure 28.8 estates are easy to pick out. They are more complex and at a smaller spatial scale than the surrounding street-based areas, each makes by density of light-shaded and segregated lines. Reflections of the origins of urbanism and the transformation of the city. Conclusions only reinforce which began. Interventions based on understanding is deficient, destructive, and false in some degree. Thank you.